Good morning. We are in the final day of the 4th of July weekend as the United States celebrates its 244th birthday. On July 4th, 1776, the United States adopted the Declaration of Independence, although it would be 6 years later when the Revolutionary War would end and British troops would leave the country. Now local communities are facing some major challenges. This morning we'll check out one of those communities, and our conversation starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, our guest this morning is Marquette City Manager Mike Angeli. Mike attended Marquette High School and Northern Michigan University. He started his career with the city of Marquette in 1976 as a police officer and worked his way up through the ranks to become Chief of Police in 2008. He was named Marquette City Manager in 2015. I started our conversation by asking the manager about the current status of city operations in Marquette.
Yeah, City Hall offices are closed, as well as our other facilities, the public works buildings, the water plants, and everything that we manage. Our intent was to, or is to, keep it closed or keep the buildings closed in line with the governor's executive orders and our phased-in program. However, depending on how long that phased-in program takes, we could be opening sooner than we had planned. But right now, for the near future, we're going to remain closed. All of our services, all of our contacts are available through either our website or through email, and so we're functioning normally.
And you do have quite a few staff people working from home then, don't you?
Well, we brought this full staff back around June 1st.
Okay.
And we had them off for about 10 to 12 weeks, working from home mostly. And but I felt the need to start bringing them back, to get more acclimated or reacclimated to working in the building in anticipation of working with the public sooner. But again, I don't know when that public is going to be back. But we'll still be here functioning like we normally do.
What's been the biggest challenge for you as the manager, managing in a time like this? Anything different?
Well, when it first started, we wanted to be all on board, all involved, and do everything we could to, protect the health and safety of our staff and the public. So, it was difficult to manage our services around that goal, while at the same time providing the services. One of our goals, or our main goal, was so that the public really didn't notice that we weren't doing things or that we were working with reduced staff, which we were. I wanted the public to feel like they normally do. I didn't want to add to their anxiety. For example, if we didn't pick up leaves, or we didn't open the compost site, or we didn't sweep the streets or plow the streets like we normally do. It's bad enough for the public had enough to worry about without worrying about us not providing the services that we normally do.
And it all seems to have worked out pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've got a great staff here and a great group of people, and they all understood, they all got on board, they all worked hard, and I'm hoping and I believe that the public really didn't notice any letdown from us whatsoever, other than the buildings being closed.
And it appears the city commission and some of your key boards and commissions have adopted this whole idea of having to work just as we are today in this interview, using Zoom technology and the other things that are available.
The commission has been very understanding and very supportive of everything we've been doing. Fortunately, at the beginning of this whole process, the rules were adapted by the governor where we could have meetings in a different format while still maintaining our Open Meeting Act requirements. The commission was flexible to that. We had several meetings in the Zoom format like we're doing now. And it takes a little bit away from the continuity and the relationship between the commissioners, when you're not in the same room. But it worked out well. We're now back to having the commission all in the commission chambers without the public. And hopefully soon we'll be at a point where the public can also come into the meetings.
I have to assume that one of your biggest challenges right now is the same as the state has and others, and that has to be finances
Yes.
and all the uncertainty about where the revenue is going to come from and what it's going to be. That has to be a real challenge for you now, doesn't it?
It is tough. And if you recall, when this whole thing started back in middle to end of March, the conversation was always in 2-week intervals, right? We're going to extend this deadline for 2 weeks, this executive order for 2 weeks. So we were planning in 2-week intervals so that, there was always the thought in the back of our mind, well, this will be over in 2 weeks, or this will be over in 4 weeks. When in reality, it was 12 weeks. And none of us at that time were thinking about the budget impact of keeping everybody employed or keeping everybody on salaries or paying them. But as it got more evident that this was going to be a long-term event and the financial impact was going to be greater than we originally anticipated, we had to put our minds together and our efforts together to try to deal with a shrinking budget for this year alone. Fortunately, we've been able to take advantage of some of the stimulus money that's come out of the federal government. We've had the opportunity, for example, to not fill open positions that we have as opposed to laying people off. I mean, the positions are still there. We're just holding them until we can regain some of our finances. And yes, the losses, I think, are going to be probably more than we certainly anticipated at the beginning. I don't think they're insurmountable. I think there's something we can easily, or not easily, but with some good work and good effort, we can deal with. So I'm somewhat optimistic that we'll be able to recover well, as long as we don't have like another relapse or something like that puts us even further back.
I had more questions for Mike Angeli about city finances, and we'll get to those issues after we take this break. Returning to our conversation with Marquette City Manager Mike Angeli, we were talking about some of the financial challenges that cities face because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Marquette's fiscal year begins on October 1st, and I asked him if the Commission has adopted a budget for the coming year.
There's two things happening right now. We're trying to balance this year's budget, which ends October 1st, and we're working on the new budget that begins October 1st. So part of the unknown for us, for example, is what our revenue sharing is going to be from the state, because they're not in a position to tell us until probably the end of August. And so we're kind of working through our budget for next year on the assumption that things will be at a certain level financially, but we're anticipating that the money is probably not going to be what we want it to be.
Of course, revenue sharing is always kind of a mystery, and I know it's something that the city of Marquette and other cities don't really plan on, but it's even more of a mystery this year, isn't it?
Well, yeah, budget or revenue sharing is one of those things that we've budgeted. We haven't budgeted. We knew we would be getting some revenue sharing, but if we counted on it, our whole budget ran the strong possibility of being messed up. So we budgeted without revenue sharing, and hopefully when we received the revenue sharing, no matter what the level was, you consider it a bonus or consider it money to fill a hole somewhere.
The House representative of the State House is considering, or perhaps has already passed, a bill that would allow a deferment of people paying their summer property taxes. Do you know if part of that plan is to keep local units of government whole, or is that something you have to be concerned about as well?
Well, part of that plan is that if by delaying the tax payments, penalty free for the taxpayer, which is probably a good idea, everybody will agree with, if that somehow burdens the municipality beyond their capabilities, the state will then lend you money to fill that gap until the taxes can be collected. Okay. And there's an interest rate, by the way. But that's, I guess, how they would consider making you whole. But in our situation, I think we have enough reserves to carry us over, so we can theoretically borrow from our reserves to get us through. I think if we get to that stage where the tax delay hurts us that bad.
Let's talk about some positive things.
Okay.
You are able to move forward with the Lakeshore Boulevard replacement. That's well underway. Are things going as planned?
Yep, it's well underway. As a matter of fact, I took a drive down there about an hour ago. Of course, you're probably aware there'll be another roundabout there, so we'll be up to maybe 6 or 7 now in Marquette. So, and the construction's going well. It looks great. The road is cut through. The infrastructure is in place. The bike path, there'll be a new bike path that's going to be on the lakeside of the new road, and a couple of parking lots. So it's well on its way being completed later this summer.
As I understand, this is kind of a two-phase project. The road is one, and maybe the development more on the shoreline, not development, but the use of the shoreline.
Yeah, the cheaper part of the whole project is replacing the road or moving the road. The expensive part is restoring the shoreline. So this summer, our number one goal is to move the road, relocate the bike path, and put in some parking lots. You'll see some of the foliage trimmed back and some of the trees and things of that nature this year. And next year, our goal is then to move to restore the shoreline, armor the shoreline a little bit better than maybe we will be doing this year, because we'd like to have it back to a stage where it looks natural, it looks normal, it stays there a while, isn't washed away in a storm, and it has allows access for the public as well. So that'll be the next phase.
Another project is the piers at Founders Landing. Is that still on the schedule for this year?
It still is. Right now, it's hung up in permitting. We've been approved through Eagle, the DNR. It's at the Army Corps of Engineers now, which needs a SHPO approval. And SHPO is the State Historical Office of Preservation, where they come in and they give you clearance as to whether or not the items you're dealing with or removing or fixing or repairing is historical in nature. So once we get that clearance, which I think we will, then we can start the project. I'd hope to have it started by now, but because of this pandemic, which put everybody at home, this permitting got delayed even more. So hopefully late summer, we might be able to get going on that.
And this is funded, I know, through the Founders Landing Brownfield, but it will provide more access to the public to the waterfront, won't it?
Yep. The both pier structures, there's one just out in front of Dockside Marine, that in front of Marquette one Marquette Place. There's a set of piers that'll be reused. And then down towards the Hampton Inn, there's another set. And those will both be open and accessible to the public. There'll be public property. The boardwalk between the two is public property. So yes, it'll offer new opportunities for the public to enjoy the lake.
We'll continue our conversation with Marquette City Manager and get to more questions after this 2-minute break. Returning to our conversation with Marquette City Manager Mike Angeli, I asked him if there were any new developments concerning the reuse or redevelopment of the Marquette General Hospital property.
No, I did talk to someone not a few months ago who was interested, but I have not heard anything lately, so I think that's kind of at a standstill.
This is not a good time for business project development, I'm sure. Has this affected other projects in the city that you're aware of?
Private, I'm not sure. We've been able to move ahead with our public projects, our road projects that we had on our capital improvement plan. Granted, because of Lakeshore Boulevard, those projects are a little less than they normally been because we had to shift some of the money around. But the contractors, the people who do all this work, they've been hungry. They've been aggressive and wanted to work. So we've had no problem at all moving ahead with that.
I know you are trying to work with local businesses. Anything new on that front, as far as restaurants being able to expand the sidewalks? And I see the state is now taking some action to allow liquor sales in certain areas that would require city approval. Is that something the commission and you were looking at now?
Yes, we recently waived our permitting process for outdoor food service on private property. We streamlined the process for outdoor food service on city property or on public property, which could be a sidewalk, a parking lot, or whatever. And now with the Liquor Control Commission or the state of Michigan lightening up or loosening the rules for outdoor liquor consumption, I'm sure that's something that we would support as well.
You know, we're hearing a lot all over the country, of course, about police, the way police forces are operating and the need to make some changes. It was interesting to hear a report here on TV6 that really Marquette is well ahead of the curve in that area. Tell us about that.
I'm very happy and proud to say that as a law enforcement agency, we've been very proactive, progressive for decades. We were one of the first, for example, to ever have an officer that interacted in the school system. I mean, we've had that kind of an attitude. So when it came to this current situation, a lot of the ideas put forth by some of the people that were protesting or demonstrating, we already had in place. And that, to me, is a reflection of a police department that understands its relationship with the community, understands what it needs to do, and how it needs to interact. And I think it's especially a reflection of the community. I mean, our police department polices to the level that the community expects. And, we've had a good relationship. The public has been good to us and we good to them back. And, it says a lot that I think, our officers and our leadership in the police department recognizes that, and the public in general recognizes that as well. So it's been really helpful.
And without getting into a lot of detail, I understand that many of the things that the public finds undesirable in some of the police actions we've seen are already things that are not used in Marquette.
Yeah, our police department is accredited in the state of Michigan. It's the only police department north of Bay City that is, and one of very few in the state. And that accreditation has a certain number of requirements, which in this case match just about everything that's been criticized in other as not necessary in other police agencies. So we've, for example, banned chokeholds. We don't have tear gas. I mean, all these things that are listed in some of these concerns are covered, and we're already practicing those methods.
And I'm certain that some of the things, this goes back to the fact that you spent a lot of years in that Marquette Police Department, and including serving as chief before taking on this assignment. So.
Yeah, and it's given me a history. It's given me a background. I know the struggles. I know what they've been through. I know what they deal with on a daily basis. And they try to do the best they can, and we always have. And it's been a pleasure to be a police officer in Marquette, this community, because of the community we have. They've always treated us well, treated us with respect, and they've made it easier to be law enforcement. And I appreciate living here. I think that the community appreciates the police department that we have, and I don't think it could be any better.
I've probably used up more than my time. Any final thoughts you have before we wrap it up?
No, I'm very good. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime.
And I appreciate having the opportunity to visit with Mike Angeli. I'm hoping that in the not too distant future, I can get back to meeting people like Mike and other guests in the studio for a real face-to-face conversation. Back in just a minute. Well, this past week we celebrated the 4th of July, or Independence Day. I think we're all very familiar with the major holidays, and especially those that include a 3-day weekend. We also have our own special days like birthdays and anniversaries that we celebrate for ourselves and for family and friends. But what you may not realize is that there are a lot of other special days, weeks, and months that don't appear on the calendar, and you might not even be aware of them. For example, in July we celebrate serious things like Eye Injury Prevention Month and National Roadside Traffic Safety Awareness Month. But did you know that July was also National Baked Beans Month, Women's Motorcycle Month, National Horseradish Month, and National Doghouse Repairs Month? Just so many more reasons for us to celebrate. And it's not just monthly observances. Every week throughout the year there are literally hundreds of special celebrations. Like in the week ahead, we have Be Nice to New Jersey Week. I'm not sure why we should be nice to New Jersey, but what can it hurt? And in the weeks ahead in July, we can look forward to National Vodka Week, Sports Cliché Week, National Ventriloquism Week, and National Scrabble Week, and World Rope Skipping Week, to name just a few. July also has a lot of special days besides the 4th of July, days like Compliment Your Mirror Day, International Cherry Pit Spitting Day, Don't Step on a Bee Day. Of course, that's always good advice. And Teddy Bear's Picnic Day. And if you're close to my age, you probably remember that song, If You Go Down in the Woods Today, You're In for a Big Surprise, because today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic. Other special days in July include Gorgeous Grandma Day and National Share a Hug Day. There are lots more, but time prevents me from listing them all. So what's the point of my bringing up all of this? Well, it's just that it's pretty easy for us to get down these days with all the troubles we have in this world. So I just want you to remember that each day there is something to celebrate. No, not the silly and frivolous things I mentioned a moment ago. If you really make the effort, you can probably find some things in your own life each day that are worth celebrating. Give it a try. I'll be back in a minute. Time for us to wrap it up for another week. Keep in mind you can see current and past episodes of this show at uppermichigansource.com. Thanks to Mike Angeli for joining us this morning, and thank you for tuning in. I hope we'll see you again next Sunday morning.